Cardfighters, Chris here from Vanguard Central, bringing you another deck in our budget deck series. This deck is a Megacolony Legion deck, and the price is around $30, maybe $40. Usually I don't count commons, so if you're buying everything from scratch, it's probably $40. And I built this deck before we got strides, so I'm going to show it to you as is. But for the G zone, you probably want to use Harmonics Messiah and Heat Magnum, as there's a lot of counterblast in the deck. So we'll just get right into the deck now. And the grade 3s are 4 of the Megacolony Promo Legion, Machining Tarantula Mark II. He has a non-Legion effect, which is Soul Blast 2 Machinings, and choose one of your opponent's rear guards and it can't stand during their next stand phase. So this ability is super good because he basically guarantees that you can early Legion, because you're going to ride a Machining grade 1, you're going to ride a Machining grade 2, and you just Soul Blast them out, and that's already 2 cards in your drop zone for Legion. It's also good for when after you Legion, you re-ride, you can Soul Blast 2, because you just have him and the mate. So it's a really good ability. Don't let it fool you just because it's not his Legion effect. And his Legion effect is when he's in Legion and you drive check a copy of a unit on your Vanguard circle, so either him or the mate, then you can counterblast 1 and your opponent's Vanguard cannot stand during their next stand phase. This is super good because it's just a counterblast 1 and they can't attack you with their Vanguard unless they re-ride. They can't draw this card, so it's really going to snowball whatever position you're in. Or, sorry, if you're ahead, it's going to snowball you. If you're behind, it's going to give you a little wiggle room to catch up. So, he's obviously the main boss. So, our secondary boss is Machining Warsicle. And our second boss isn't the Break Ride, just because the Break Ride isn't Machining. And we want to have a lot of Machining because he uses Machining to Soul Blast. He uses Machining Counterblasts, and there's a few other cards that have like a special Counterblast and things like that, or want a Machining Vanguard. So that's why we use Machining Warsicle. And he has an on-ride effect, is Counterblast 1 Machining, and you can choose a unit or a Machining unit from your soul and call it to rear guard as rest. So that gives you a little, like, an extra card, a free card. It can help snowball you or recover from retire effects. I only try to use it if I'm really trying to rush them down. I need that extra card early. Generally, you have a lot of better things to use your counterblast for. So, an example of something better would be his Limit Break effect, which is if he doesn't hit the Vanguard, then you can counterblast 2, and your opponent can't stand their Vanguard during the next stand phase. So that's gonna help because say you pressure them really early and you put them 4 damage, and then you ride him, and now they're forced to either take it or they don't get the drive checks, they don't get those extra cards, so you're going to snowball your advantage position. So that's kind of why I made this deck a little aggressive, because the fact that if they don't stand their Vanguard either with your Legion skill or the Limit Break here, it's going to make them not be able to draw those cards from the drive check, which really puts them behind. And it will snowball an advantage if you have it, so it's all about trying to get that early advantage and then snowballing it with either him or him. So that being said, we'll go into the grade 2s. We are running 4 of the Legion mate, Machining Hornet Mark II, and his effect is when you're in Legion, if you call him to your rear guard, you can choose an opponent's rear guard and prevent it from standing. I don't really like this ability just because we only have 1 Legion unit, so it's not super effective. You know, you're not always going to be able to use it. But we have to run 4 because he's a drive checker unit, so we want to try to drive check these. And sometimes when you Legion, you want to put a bunch of these back in the deck so you can try to stun their Vanguard. Not much else to say about him. The next grade 2 is Machining Tarantula. The baby form of our grade 3, his effect is when it hits a Vanguard you can counterblast one machining and then choose an opponent's unit and can't stand it. So this is good because it lets you add some pressure to your Vanguard, to your attacks. And if you ride him as a grade 2 Vanguard, you're basically guaranteed that stun, which will put a halt to their early aggression. So it can give you a lot of breathing room against early aggression, or it can snowball you by letting you stun their Vanguard booster and making easier guards for the next turn. So then we run, so our last grade 2 is Machining Red Soldier, who's a 12k machining attacker. And he's good because 12k attackers, as most people know, they can hit 7k grade 1s without being boosted, and it takes a 10k shield, which is great because we're trying to be really aggressive with this deck. If we can get that early advantage, as I said, you know, then being able to stun their Vanguard is super strong. So that's what we're going for. And that's done with the grade 2, so we'll talk about the grade 1s. Probably the best grade 1 is Machining Caucus. I have no idea how to say that. Oops, spoiler alert. And we run 4 of him because when he boosts a machining unit and it hits a Vanguard, then you just get to stun an opponent's rear guard, which is the can't stand during their stand phase. So that's really strong because it's no cost, you just have to hit, and applies a lot of pressure. And he's also one of the reasons we don't run the break ride, is because it's really good to have him behind Vanguard, because a lot of times they'll let it hit early game and you can just get these free stuns, free paralyzes. But once you have the break ride, that kind of prevents you from doing that. So machining all the way. And as you may have noticed in the little spoiler, we are also running Megacolony Battler B at 3. And he is the original form of Caucus, which is when he boosts a Megacolony unit and that attack hits Vanguard, you can counterblast 1 and choose an opponent's rear guard, and it can't stand during the stand phase. So we run a total of 7 of these guys because you can just put them behind all your columns, and then when anything hits, there's going to be a stun effect. And most of the time you're going to be using your counterblasts on him, which is why you don't really want to use Machining Warsickle's call ability unless you're calling one of these guys to get some extra pressure to your field. So that's why we run 7. And the another thing to note is he's not machining, so he's not something you really want to ride on grade 1, just because it messes up your soul blasts for the mate, because you won't have the 2 machining in the soul. So try to avoid riding him, but insane card when you have him boosting something. And another grade 1 is Machining Black Soldier, is a 10k grade 1 attacker for Megacolony. And we run him because the grade 1 back row is mainly going to be either Megacolony Battler B or Caucus, which means that this grade 1 should be able to hit. And since he's a 10k, that makes a 16k column, which is good numbers. So that's pretty simple, just another attacker that lets you hit those magic numbers, so to speak, with your stunning boosters. And then lastly we run 3 quintet walls. This is kind of a problem because usually you want to use your counterblasts for your Vanguard effects, stunning their Vanguard, for Megacolony Battler B, stunning their rear guards. So there's not a lot of wiggle room for using your quintet walls, and the only reason they're really in here is because it's a budget build. And the perfect guards for Megacolony went way up because they only have 1 and it was printed forever ago. So if you're planning on building this deck but you want to make it better, definitely switch those out, because they fight for your counterblast resources a lot. The decking out isn't really an issue because of Legion, but it's mainly that counterblast that really hurts you, because you could be using it to stun a rear guard instead of using it for a quintet wall, or even stunning a Vanguard, which is essentially a perfect guard. Then our starter is Megacolony Battler C, fitting with the theme of when your attack hits and it boosts. Counterblast 1, move it into the soul, and you stun an opponent's rearguard. So this just helps you get on-hit pressure on every single one of your attacks. So anything that hits is going to make them stun a rearguard, and that kind of diminishes their offensive abilities and makes them want to guard because no one likes their stuff getting stunned. So for triggers, we are running 8 cicadas. We run 8 because they're machining. There's only so many machining triggers, and because we have a special machining counterblast, it's easier just to run the 8 machining cicadas, have an all machining trigger lineup, than trying to like toy with your counterblasts to get the right ones. And the benefit also is that when he's called, if you have the machining in the soul, he becomes a 7k attacker. So like if you are at grade 2 and they're still at grade 1, you can call him and he'll be able to hit their Vanguard. And then we are also running 4 crits and 4 heals. So that's the deck. Yeah, again, there's no G-Zone for this deck because I built it before Strides came out. I just didn't get around to filming it. But if you want to build this deck and add Stride units, then you're going to probably want to use Harmonix Messiah and Heat Element Magum, just because they don't use any counterblast like Atmos and Blizzard do. So I hope you like the deck. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you have any questions, suggestions about the deck. Vanguard Central out.